I'm blessed because in Collier County, the people that run these boards are ex-CEOs, ex-CFOs. They've run corporations that are in the millions or billions of dollars. So they know what they're doing, and they did a good job on the corporate governance aspect. The next chapter is responsibly integrating AI, because I think that that's really something that every firm, small or large, is going to have to deal with. And we're doing it, but it's only something that's going to accelerate. The good thing about being a young attorney is you get paid to learn. You get paid to develop, which is amazing. You want to learn from good people. You want to have exposure to the work. You want to be able to develop your own work. You want a firm that will invest in you. And especially with AI now, what they're learning, and people saying, oh, I can replace, this can do what a first-year lawyer could do, but it can do it in 1/40th of the time. That is not going to help any young lawyer get to where they need to be able to replace you and I when we ultimately retire.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Briefcase, sponsored by the Collier County Bar Association. And today we're talking about a firm that's not just practicing law, but actively shaping the legal community here in Southwest Florida. Today I'm joined by Ashley Lupo, who's been with the firm for over 2 decades, and she's with Rutzel and Andress. Ratzel is a firm that many of you know, not just for the work that they do, but how they show up in the legal community. And Ashley brings her own practice and perspective to the table. But what I'm really excited about is getting her perspective on an inside look in the firm, how it operates, what it stands for, and why it continues to invest in organizations like the Collier County Bar Association. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. So fun.
So I want to start off with you to give me a quick snapshot of what your day-to-day practice looks like at the firm.
So I'm a CA lawyer, community association lawyer. My board certification's in condominium and plan development law, right? But I reps country clubs, condos, HOAs. My day-to-day is a mix of real estate, corporate governance merging with controlled chaos prevention, because it's all communities and neighborhoods, and you have really smart volunteers that are running them, and they want their communities to run smoothly, and I help them accomplish that. That's day to day.
So sometimes it's like herding cats, right? These members of the board.
I think that it is giving them perspective, absolutely. And sometimes it's hard to gain that when you're living it, and your neighbors are the people that are asking you for things, and you're also watching them walk their dogs in front of your house, right?
Yeah.
So it's much easier for me to have that step back and give them the practical answer. This is what the law requires, but this is how you get to where you're supposed to go. So it's a lot of just practical day-to-day governance.
So you'll attend the board meetings, or you'll advise the board members before and after the board meetings?
Yeah, I think it's all of it, right? So it's contact with the GM. We have top-notch GMs in Collier. It's advising the board officers, the president. Sometimes it's a board meeting, and it's attending members' meetings. Sometimes it's talking to the membership. It just depends upon what they're looking for.
How long have you been board certified in condo and HOA law?
That's a good question.
I know it's a newer certification, relatively speaking.
Yeah. So I was on the first round when it got certified, and I don't know if it was the first test that they offered is the one that I took, I believe. So I've gone through one round. I think it's good for 5 years, and then I'm in my second term now.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, I as a real estate practitioner primarily, we really depend on lawyers like yourself that are board certified in that area, because we know the traps that are hidden. And after the Surfside collapse on the East Coast, the condo and HOA law really leveled up, and the liability of the attorneys who represent these boards really took next level. So you have to watch yourself just as much as you have to watch out for your clients and what they stand for, and the responsibilities that they have in the associations that they manage, right?
That's a great analysis of what has turned out to be a much bigger job for our community associations, for the board members, than they thought that they were getting into, right? They had they had a hurricane in 2017, they had a pandemic, right? And you had a bunch of people coming down. You had Surfside happen. All of a sudden, the legislature is adopting even more rules regarding their governance structure and their financials and different things that they have to comply with, and personal liability, right?
Yeah.
Criminal exposure has been added to the statute for certain items, and these are volunteers that live in there. So
Unpaid volunteers.
paid volunteers that are living there. And for a real estate lawyer, right? It used to be here are the condo docs, right? And the financials came and the client got them, but did they really look at the reserve schedule? Did they really look at the SIRS report? Did they really know what they were looking at? And from the real estate side, I think y'all also have a much larger job in terms of what is my obligation now to advise somebody if they're buying into, especially a condominium, right? HOAs are significantly more regulated since I started practicing, right? And it used to not even be a statute, right? Condos, preacher statutes started out that way. But you really have to know what your client's looking to do, right? It's not just, can I have my pickup truck there? And if I move in with my 2 German Shepherds, am I allowed to, right? It's,
Yeah.
am I going to get hit with a special assessment?
Speaking of special assessments, one big event you left out was the floods from Hurricane Ian. And I know that most, if not all, of the affected properties were in either an HOA, a condo, or both. So I know that that's really leveled up. And you mentioned the SIRS report. That's the Structural Integrity Reserve Study for anyone that's not listening. And what that does is that gives you an idea as to how financially fit the condo is that you're moving into and what you might expect to come as a special assessment. Fortunately, in Southwest Florida, we've got a lot of those special assessments either already made or determined. So someone buying now versus a year ago is a lot more educated, has a lot more material to digest in terms of what they would take to live in those condos and HOAs, right?
Most of, well, my, they're hiring myself and Rutzel, right? They're the type of clients that are going to have their SIRS report. They're going to want to make sure that they have everything in order. And to a large extent, I'm blessed because in Collier County, the people that run these boards are ex-CEOs, ex-CFOs, ex-CPAs. They've run corporations that are in the millions or billions of dollars. So
Right.
they know what they're doing, and they did a good job on the corporate governance aspect. So hurricanes notwithstanding, they were in a very good place to start out with versus a community that might have all of a sudden been required to add all this money to the reserve pot, and they just didn't plan for that very quick eventuality.
You also mentioned the criminal liability now, and I know some of that will even stem from that big community association where they were embezzling funds or stealing funds, and that made the news in South Florida and Southwest Florida.
There, there are always horror stories as far as you know theft and embezzlement. And I think that anybody that has good financial practices and redundancies, and you have somebody looking at it, you have access to the accurate books, to your bank's accounts, you keep on top of that. That is just a lesson. The legislature's goal, just my opinion, is transparency and accountability. And those two things are going to prevent, they're in the fraud prevention triangle, as you would, right? Do you have opportunity is one of the fraud prongs that you have to look out for. So closing those gaps is really helping lead these volunteers to a place that maybe they didn't go otherwise.
Yeah, that's good. You learn from other people's mistakes.
You do, unfortunately.
And then if you're not represented by a good counsel like yourself, you may repeat those mistakes if you don't know any better.
You don't know what you don't know, and it's so micromanaged, and in a lot of ways good because the outcome, I think, is in the intent is in the right place, but it does provide a horrible burden on some of my board members, and they're tired. You mentioned the hurricanes. They've had three. It wasn't just Ian. It was the two the next year too.
Milton, right?
You got it. I mean, you dig sand off your out of your pool, and then you have to do it twice the next year, and you're not in your unit yet, and it's just tiring. They're tired.
Well, thank you for sharing that insight with me on your practice. I want to talk a little bit about Ratzel and Andress. So, what drew you specifically to Ratzel and Andress that many years ago?
Yeah, I was with a small firm back in the early aughts, right? 2000, 2001, and in '02, I didn't really wanna I wasn't I needed a mentor, and the good thing about being a young attorney is you get paid to learn, right? You get paid to develop, which is amazing. And Rutzel, I just at that, a lot of it is timing. They had an opening, and I put in for it, and the experience and the depths of the people that were there at that time, and the quality of work that they were doing was just it's an opportunity that was um, really enticing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, mentorship is important, and being paid to learn is a nice benefit. So, I could see how that drew to you. What practice area did you start in with the firm?
So I was put in half CA, half in community association, and then I did a little bit of real estate. We did work for the school board at the time, the city of Naples at the time, so it's a little bit of municipal, had a little bit of employment. I mean, I really got a pretty good overview of everything, which is necessary to be a CA lawyer because you're really an attorney for a whole bunch of different little mini cities, right? I mean, it can be a community of a couple thousand units and mixed use. It can be a smaller buildings, and you really have to have um, baseline knowledge of a lot of those issues, right? You have to be able to know some employment. You have to be able to know when to call in a litigator, or a land use attorney or a real estate attorney.
Yeah.
You
So,
have to do it yourself.
for the general public, if anyone's listening on from that audience, is you have to know what you don't know, but you also have to be able to issue spot, and that's what us lawyers learn over years and years of practice is. And then, of course, new issues come up when the laws change, when new hurricanes, when 100-year floods hit the area, and then having other um, experts in those areas or some experience yourself really pays it forward.
That's what's really helpful about Rutzel is that there's such a depth of the types of law that people practice. There's very little that I can't find somebody that's an expert. And I have a niche, right? I can't keep on top of all of the employment laws and the corporate laws and the real estate laws over and above CA. It's just not possible to do everything well, right?
That's right.
It's important for the clients that we serve is that they're getting the right answer from the right person.
That's good. Well, for someone hearing the name for the first time, what should they know about the firm of Retzel and Andress?
So Rutzel is 150 years old, right? We were originally established in Ohio, and we came down to Southwest Florida in the 80s, right as people from Ohio retired down here and needed assistance with real estate or needed assistance with estate planning, right? So one of the things that was enticing to me as well when I joined it was a big firm, but it was a smaller office, right? In the double numbers, but it wasn't a big firm with 150 lawyers all in one location.
Yeah, with that number of years being established, normally you find, 50 or more, right? I don't know what the number is now compared to then, but when you started, how many lawyers were with the firm approximately?
How many lawyers were the firm wide? I want to say there was probably about 20 in the Naples office, and we had the Fort Myers office at the time.
Okay. Well, that's still a good number, but it's 25 years in the making, thereabouts.
And in Naples, it was large for Naples at
Yeah.
the time. And uh, Midwestern, I'm from the South. I'm from Charleston, South
Okay.
Carolina. So we had the same type of philosophy in terms of working hard, but being being almost not laid back, because I don't want to use that term, 'cause it's not possible in our profession to be laid back, right?
Yeah.
But it's also to be very intentional about where you put your energy, and doing so in a respectful way. And that's what I like about the people that I got to work with, right? You go for the work and you stay for the people. And I can say that that's why I've been there a long time, right? Since '02. But I came for the work and I stayed for the work, but also for the people.
What what does Retzel and Andress pride itself on aside from the legal work?
Well, aside from the depth of the legal work, I would say it is culture, um, and culture and the people. I mean, I can't repeat that enough, right? How we um, mentor the people that we bring on, because it is all about bringing on people and training them. It's important. Mentorship is, I think, a pain point as a young lawyer, right? You want to learn from good people. You want to have exposure to the work. You want to be able to develop your own work. You want um, a firm that will invest in you. And especially with AI now, what they're learning, and people saying, oh, I can replace, this can do what a first year lawyer could do, but it can do it in 1/40th of the time. That is not going to help any young lawyer get to where they need to be able to replace you and I when we ultimately retire.
Couldn't agree with you more.
I mean, it's such so we recognize, the benefits of AI for our clients and how that strategically can be used, but it doesn't um, negate the need to maintain relationships and development of the young lawyers who help me in my practice, right? And the firm invests in that. And so I think that that's very important. We're on the cutting edge and we have the technology, we have the big firm resources, but I think relationship-wise, we maintain that, which is important.
Yeah, and it's hard to be consistent over the years in establishing a culture that lasts. So being able to pivot, change with the times, avoid um, relying too much on AI, and keeping that human side to the relationship with the clients and with each other, I think is really important.
And it dovetails into the type of law I practice, right? Because it is very much a human-focused, relationship-driven practice, right? So for me, it works especially well
Yeah.
because what we do is stressful. All lawyers, we know what the statistics are in terms of mental health, in terms of addiction, in terms of making sure that people are taking care of themselves. And I think it's important that you practice in a place where that is mindful to that.
Yeah.
You can do really good work, and it's possible to be a really good lawyer, do really good work, but also do it in a place in a way that's healthy.
Yeah, I agree. And when it comes to the use of AI in our day to day, you know, we really need to use it as support for the human side of things because there's all this talk about robots taking over and things like that, and what does the future of the practice of the law look like? And I had a conversation with another attorney in town who mentioned that think of AI as your general magistrate, right? And you're the judge. So you can use it to help you make decisions, but ultimately you're the one that signs off on it. So if you're relying too much on the AI to make your decisions, then ultimately the decisions lose that human element to them.
Correct. And it's not a replacement for your analysis or your experience, or it can help you issue spot. But it's important that we're given the opportunity in this space to think and not rely too heavily on the AI as far as, oh, it identified the issues. Let me look within this. You have to think outside the box that is AI and stare out the window
Yeah.
and just give yourself that bandwidth and
That
do it.
space. Yeah. Sometimes when I use AI, I write a prompt, I'm getting too much too quick. And you have to quickly digest it. And then you're second guessing what you thought before and what you thought after reading this. And sometimes it could be crippling. Um, I often find that there's maybe too many options because as a lawyer, there's not always one answer. I tell people all the time that if you ask three different lawyers the same question, you're most likely going to get three different variations of an answer. And that's based on their experience in life, in practice, and also the amount of research and that they've already done on their own. And dealing with very fact-specific client circumstances, which the AI can't necessarily apply that to unless you feed it everything that's in your brain. And as you know, we don't always share what's on our brain. There's a lot of things that we keep in there that we have reference points that we can come back to, and the computers can't do that for us.
Might be the right legal answer, but if it blows up the neighborhood, then it's not the right
That's
answer,
right.
So you have to make sure that
Yeah,
you're mindful of
that's
that.
right. Plus, our clients hire us to have a human element to the representation. That's why they call us counselors at law, right? So if we rely too much on the computers to give that advice to the clients, then we lose that as well.
Absolutely. I think you and I both have probably had situations where hey, we ran this through our AI and this is what popped out. Can you tell us this? And you look at it and say, but it's not right. And then you type it in and then oh, yes, well, you're right about that. And analyzing it further, it's
Right.
problematic when they're using it as their answer solely. So I think that's a risk too.
Well, you talked about the culture, just to come full circle on that. What would you say, what kind of attorney thrives at Retzel and Andress?
I think that you have to be, um, hmm, you have to have a good work ethic, right? I mean, you need to be responsive. I need to be able to trust that the people I give the work to are going to use their best job intelligence, work ethic to get it done, right? I know if I give something to a Paul Hireman or a Mark Price, right, that it's going to come back and it's going to be right. A John Fishbane, a Mark Hewling. It's going to come back and my clients are good in their hands and I can trust them to do that. Um, the attorney that thrives has an entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because we're an investment in the lawyers. When I started, I made partner in five. I think I started in '02. I made partner in '07 because I had the knowledge base, but they made the invest in me to be able to go out and develop business and bring in contacts and bring in clients, and I was a shareholder in 2011. And I was the first female vertical partner in the Florida offices.
Very
And
nice.
they said, "What do you need?" What do you need? And they gave it to me. And they're willing to do that. And I say they, it's really we, right? We're willing to do that because we want to develop that long-term relationship with people that we can give work to. Be My partner, like Mark, for example, he joined 3 months after I did. Sean Ellis, who's the lead of the Fort Myers office, he joined, I think, within 3 weeks of me. So there's a lot of us that have been there for a really long time. I think the two people I mentioned before, Paul and Mark, they've been there for the 10 years before me. So it really is a relationship developed over time. And then we're mentoring people to be what the us
Yeah.
later on. And so if you feel like you want to be part of that, then we're the right place for you. We're not a silo.
Yeah, and I remember when I was just out of law school, I was a little bit older. I was 33. It was more of a non-traditional track, and I was already thinking of what it would be like to work in a law firm, and I didn't know. So I got a little experience, and then I started my own firm, and then you hear stories of your friends that went to the large firms. And that's where more of the silo um, framework becomes more evident. And you hear stories about being stuck in a room, doing 100 hours a week, research and not meeting with clients. And I think it's important to get out there and start meeting with the public, but also have more of a collaborative type environment. As long as you know that you're carrying your weight and decisions can be made together for that longevity of the firm.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I didn't want to do big law after law school. Coming out of Miami, and I had friends that did the big law, and I went small. And that's why when I moved to Rutzel, I was a little antsy. I don't want to end up like that, but it's not And in Naples, it might be the area, especially of Collier, where we are a community, and especially the bar. I mean, the bar is such a good bar that we have here. And the development and the mentorship and the people willing to reach out and to help you and to answer questions and to pick up the phone. I mean, we're really lucky in Collier to have that. And I'm glad that I landed here.
Well, speaking of the bar, which is one of the reasons why we have you here today, what led or what motivated the firm to support the Collier County Bar Association at the level that the firm does?
Well, as far as motivation, I think that it's important that we support the legal community, right? I mean, the bar does a lot of really good things. It provides support to people that need support either through referral services or lawyers helping lawyers or the collaborative nature, and the mentorship. Because, well, I might be at Rutzel, there's a lot of people out there that didn't have, that are individual or niche areas. And you need that collegiality of community so that people can develop those contacts so they can pick up the phone and say, hey, I think this is an issue. I don't have this area of expertise. And you need those people through the bar association, right?
Yeah.
You need the bar association in order to be able to do that. I think it's important that you have a tract in your career where you have a business develop more professional organizational tracks to be able to provide that mentorship as well as something that's non-legal related, right? For your sanity. So you have your passion projects. And the bar is really the foundation of that community. From that, everything else can happen. The young lawyers, the real estate, the TV, the overarching bar association. I mean, it really is. And my former partner, Jamie Schwinghammer, is right now, she's doing great work in terms of bringing awareness to some of the mental health initiatives I think she just had in one of her, in one of the bars um, get-togethers.
Yes.
So
I was there. That was a really good one. And speaking of supporting the programs that the bar offers that couldn't otherwise offer without the level of sponsorship from some firms, I think is really important. So you support what you want more of, and that it's the benefit, it has a ripple effect in the legal community. So we have the Florida bar, which is over 100,000 members strong. You can get involved at the state level, but getting involved at the local level pays so much more dividends in the near term. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the big bar conferences or anything like that, because they offer different things that cover the entire state, which we all still need. But having that collegiality that you mentioned is really key. Going to bar events where you meet all different lawyers from all different size firms, you have the opportunity to have more of an effect on the others. So when you do have to pick up the phone, it's that much easier of a conversation, or at least that's the hope, right?
that work start locally and issues are local, right? So what the city of Naples might be doing or what Collier County might be doing or how certain judges require things, what those requirements are different locally. So you have to have that basis. Practicing CA law in Collier is substantially different here than practicing CA law in Broward County. It
Yes.
just is. And so you definitely need that local perspective.
Otherwise, you're almost like a silo in the community, not necessarily in a firm, but if you're not in tune with what others in the community are dealing with, then you don't have those same opportunities. I mean, I've reached out to different experts in different areas of the state that you always take a step back. If their specialization is in, say, condo and HOA law, and you're dealing with something that only that they're known for, you might not otherwise get to meet them if you don't go to some of those state events. Same thing applies in the local level. Um, how many associations are there? How many? I don't want you to give me statistics, but roughly how many homeowners associations are there in Collier County?
I wouldn't even be able to tell you.
Well over 100.
Oh, yeah.
And then same with condo associations. Could one or two or five lawyers handle all that work? No, absolutely not. And are those all created equal? No, they're in different parts of the county. They're Some are dealing with forest fires and the others are dealing with floods. So there's all these different things that
Different stages of redevelopment or repair or different neighborhood dynamics at any given period of time. Um,
Yeah, I think established firms have a responsibility to the local legal ecosystem where um, by being involved in the local bar, it gives others perspectives that are going to provide a benefit to the community at large, right? Because if you had just, you know, a smaller subset of lawyers dealing with all of the issues versus more lawyers dealing with them, then it's almost like the ability to mastermind, right? And you don't have conversations with these other lawyers unless you go to these bar functions, or in the rare event that you end up across the table from them. And as you know, in your practice, it's not, you don't have to go to court. And there's disputes, but they're often settled sort of behind closed doors, or they're resolved with discussion and discourse. And one conversation is in one room is not going to be the same as a conversation in the other room.
and if you don't have the ability to go out and see other lawyers for a practice where you're not dealing on a day-to-day basis with other attorneys, right? I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I don't have to talk to other lawyers unless there's a dispute, right?
Right.
Because my clients are neighborhoods or
Yeah, so you can pick up the phone from someone at another firm that's has the same certification. Say, hey, have you ever dealt with this before? Because no one in your firm has, because you're the one that's supposed to be handling it. And I do that with real estate. I do that with probate. I do that with estate planning. And it helps us provide better services to the clients that we service by knowing that we don't have to know it all, and that we have this network that wouldn't otherwise be possible without the Collier County Bar.
it's being created as, as we practice, right? I mean, every year, used to be every 5, now it's every year, right?
Yeah.
They come out with new changes, 718 or 720, and you look at it and you say, don't think like they thought this through all the way when they were doing it. So you have to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is an unintended consequence. How are you handling this? Because you need different perspectives, so that what to better tell the clients. Because sometimes you can tell the clients, listen, I don't know what the answer is because it hasn't been ferreted out yet, and there is this problem and this problem, but this is where we think it should land, right? And that's really what your job is.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the client impact. Who are the ideal clients for Retzel and Andress?
Who are the ideal clients? Well, I can speak as to who the ideal clients are from the CA perspective, right? They are communities that are well managed, right? Boards that want practical advice, knowing a lot of it is what the risk is, where the law is, and where do you want to end up, and what are you required to do, and what can you do, and what's best for a community and how to get it there, right? But that's really who my uh, larger mid-sized communities, country clubs, but I work with well managed. We have really good managers in the community, top notch veterans of our clubs here, of our condominiums. We have a really good CA.
So, if a smaller association approaches the firm and wants advice, you'll have a certain um, vetting out process to make sure they're a good fit.
I think and I have smaller clients, right? I have smaller clients, it depends on whether or not what their what their management situation is, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure that I like to stay in the legal lane, right? I can give practical advice because that's also my job as the counselor, as you say. But my job is not to be their GM. So I won't represent self-managed communities, for example, because you have to know when to ask a lawyer a question and when it's a GM question. And there's a licensed CAM that and they should have that, but a lot of times I just want to make sure that and they have to be willing to take the advice, right?
Yes.
Because part of knowing as a more experienced attorney is knowing, is your client taking your advice, or
Amen to that.
right, are you getting, do you trust them to give you the full picture? And then on the counter side, they have to trust you to be able to tell them when they're not gonna get the answer they want.
Yeah, I'm really glad you distinguished the GM role versus the lawyer role, because I think that people need to hear that. So if you're managing an association and you haven't already designated that manager, whether it's through a larger management company or an individual that approaches you and you know you need that help, they're going to help you spot those issues as to when you call the lawyer so you don't have to figure it out for yourself. And so many questions I get, I'll just use real estate as an example. If somebody's buying or selling property and they ask me to review their HOA documents, I tell them, well, what would you like me to look for in there? Because for me to review it all for you, that's not necessarily going to help you. You need to be aware of what it says. And I'm not going to be the best person to interpret that, but I can tell you what effect this may have on living in the community and what legal responsibilities, rights, obligations you and or the association that you're going to live in has. And that's where attorneys in your specialty, I think, really shine, because you will give that extra level. But you may also know when to punt that issue to the association manager.
Correct. And a lot of a lot of the disputes are over things that people vote on, but didn't really understand what the unintended consequences are of the vote, right? So if you look at documents, really from a real estate perspective, most questions are leasing, right? Can I lease, right? And what are the restrictions on that, right? Pets, parking, things that affect your day to day, and then they don't realize, what authority does the board have if they're doing a capital improvement, right? Are they allowed to add this without asking the membership? What is my ultimate financial exposure? Or I'm okay with delegating this whole property and how it's going to be managed to the board, because that's why I buy in a planned community, right? I don't want the hassle of renovating my lobby or replacing my roof or figuring out what palm trees to plant where, right? That's delegated, but you have to let that go and be okay with the board and the manager doing that.
Right.
And if you're buying in, some people don't understand how significant amount of control you give up as an individual. And that's not necessarily specific to Florida, but it is different than other states that might be on the common code, or they might not have the abilities that our boards do to operate,
Yeah.
right, independently of an owner vote.
Yeah, which comes with landmines in terms of operating that association if you don't have the right experts on your team.
Correct. And it's about transparency and communication, right? And a lot of what we do is help the boards decide how to communicate things so that it is being transparent to the extent they can be, right? So because the when the communication falls down, that's when you have problems. And my job is to keep them out of litigation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to have this conversation today, because I don't know too many board certified attorneys locally in your area of specialty. And I like to have a short list of individuals that can really handle stuff that we don't. So that, again, goes in terms of the benefit of the legal community we have here in Southwest Florida. Well, let me ask you this, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of the firm. What does the next chapter look like for Ratzel and Andress?
Think the next chapter is responsibly integrating AI, right? Because I think that that's really something that every firm, small or large, is going to have to deal with. And we're doing it, but it's only something that's going to accelerate. I think it is strategically um, growing and mentoring, continuing to grow and mentor younger attorneys, right? And the variety of the practices that Collier specifically requires, so that there is that vertical pipeline, right? Because and with them come new ideas, right? And with them come new experiences and new relationships. That and it is at the end of the day, clients want to to have a relationship. I mean, in my practice, you have a relationship with your attorney, right? You can represent a client for 10, 20 years. So and the relationships that I develop and the people that might have synergies with my personality are going to be different than with the people that are just coming out of law school or that Brett, my associate, is, a couple of years out, right?
Yeah.
And you need to continue to develop that and invest in that. And so from our perspective, it is just being very intentional about that growth and that mentorship, but also, navigating the AI, the flex work with remote work and everything so that people can practice and be really good at their jobs and still have a life and still be able to be healthy and enjoy it because this job is it's not a suffer fest, right?
That's right.
You're supposed to be able to enjoy what you do. And so how do you get to where that is?
Well, how would you say Ratzel and Andress is evolving with the profession itself?
Go back to what I just said as far as evolving is making sure that if the way people want to practice what they're doing differs than how it was when I started or 10 years ago, that we acknowledge that there it has value because if they don't like coming into work or working remote if they have that preference for a period of time while still maintaining relationships, right? It's important for you to have FaceTime, but that importance for FaceTime doesn't mean that you have to be sitting in the office next to me all the time,
Right.
right? And so how people see themselves practicing, you just have to recognize that there's differences there in terms of how you yourself got to where you go. There's not one path to being successful, and there's not one definition of success. So in here for Rutzel, what we want to do is make sure that how that fits in. If you're a great lawyer that has a practice and wants to have that teamwork, then we can fit you in
Yeah.
to that puzzle.
Well, I have one last question for you in closing. Thank you for sharing all those insights with me. When people think about Ratzel and Andress after hearing this, what do you hope stands out?
I would hope that people understand that we are very good at what we do and that we're also want to be involved in the community and that we are available to both our colleagues who I have colleagues that call me all the time and I love those phone calls, right?
Yeah.
But also to support the community and the mentorship and just support the bar association. Um, that's what I would hope that you would get out of that. Plus a little teeny bit about CA law.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard not to talk about what you do every day. I get that. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and representing the firm. Um, and thanks again for Ratzel and Andress for supporting the Collier County Bar. It was a pleasure talking to you today. And I look forward to seeing you around in the community. Also encourage any listeners to continue to tune in as we have conversations with other lawyers that are in different firms, different practice areas. What's the website? How can people find Ratzel and Andress?
www.ralaw.com.
All right. I was hoping we wouldn't have to spell out Ratzel and Andress. So
So says pronounced like pretzel, but yeah.
ralaw.com. And is there a main phone number they can call?
Naples is 239-649-6200. But if they need anything, you can lupo at ralaw.com or hit me up on LinkedIn and
Okay. Sounds great. All right. Thanks again, Ashley. Thanks for everybody for listening.